Greetings and welcome to another episode of the U Talk Show. This time we actually hit record and didn't
I
stop the
jinxed it.
recording.
Sorry.
What?
I jinxed it.
You did. You did. When you said that we went through a day where we didn't accidentally not hit record. Well, where I didn't accidentally not hit record. So this time we are recording and we are answering a
Coming to you
question.
live from the scene of the crime.
Yes, and we are answering a question, and that question is, how are our biases exploited by others? I will quickly, for the third time now, reiterate um, that media machines do this very well. They exploit our natural biases in the way that they present news and journalism. Um, as corporate media machines, the way they present it tends to be very superficial, but they use the aesthetic of truthfulness to make the information, the factoids, the pseudo science look truthful.
Good
And
use
a
of
great
factoid. I love it.
Yes, and an example of this would be the old Fox News pipeline. They would start with a bunch of assertions in a news report at the start of the day, and then they would have Fox and Friends after that discussing those assertions, not really giving you enough time to examine the assertions themselves or to let it mull over in your mind. It'd be quick moving, and you'd basically be swept up in the conversation before you had a chance to examine whether the original assertions were true. So they got their premise. They then started a discussion based on that premise, and then they would have the O'Reilly factor and the O'Reilly report at night, where Big Papa O'Reilly would come in and essentially, what's the word? Bring it to a conclusion, but at the same time, it wouldn't be like a solid conclusion. It'd be more, they would present the assertions, they would present the discussion, using phrases like "some people say," and "people are discussing the fact." People seem outraged by this. All fairly vague statements, but they're really just referring to their own reporting and coverage. Technically what he's saying is true, it's a factoid, but it's not actually, the original premise is not actually true. They're just saying some people have said this, therefore they're not addressing it, and they don't ever address the substance of the original assertion. Instead, then, essentially laying down the law, or laying down the true information, the truth, presenting it in such a way as to lead you to a certain conclusion. And in that way, what they would end up with is they would present, they would magnify certain pieces of information, put them all together in a curated fashion, painting a picture for you. And it didn't matter that that picture was entirely false, and it was drawn, because it was drawn from these factoids, these things that were technically true but not really in context meaning what they were presenting it to mean. They instead of putting their name to an answer, they would present this, have you come to your own conclusion, based on a very curated and leading set of information that led you to their conclusion.
And
And
you know what?
that's how they would essentially get you.
I'm gonna
They
mention
would.
Walter Cronkite again. The previous two recordings I've mentioned him, it's getting to the point where, just mentioning a name of like one of the gods of journalism is giving me a semi. So Walter
Please,
Cronkite
PG-13 rated.
was a newscaster in the 50s, 60s. I think actually he sort of ended up in the 70s as well, before turning over to Dan Rather. But he would sign off a newscast with "I'm Walter Cronkite, and that's the way it is. Good night." And he was one of the old guard. Walter Cronkite, hearing conflicting reports about what the hell was going on in Vietnam, took a crew over. and spoke with commanders on the ground, spoke with soldiers,
I saw some of
brought that
that footage.
information back to the States. And it was said that Lyndon B. Johnson saw the newscasts and remarked, "My God, if I've lost Walter Cronkite, I've lost Middle America."
Mm.
Because he was able to place his name on the journalistic ideals of integrity and factual reporting and not introducing bias. He was able to say at the end of every night with a clear conscience, and that's the way it is,
Mm.
and not get sued for misrepresenting the way it is.
Mm.
Your more modern newscasters are like, well, maybe that's not the way it is. What do you think? All
Yeah,
while
they'll
making
present a
damn
vague.
sure that you think that that's the way it is.
Yeah, they'll present a vague sort of a vague set of opinions, but in some cases even very hyper specific um factoids that lead you to a conclusion. And the most insidious part is that it makes you think that it was your conclusion. In doing so, you see this essentially it causes people to identify with that conclusion because
And
they
to
came
become
up with it.
frustrated that others don't share it because it's right
Yeah,
there. Why can't you see it?
yeah. And so if you challenge it, it ends up being that you're challenging them as a person. That's how it's viewed psychologically. It's a very insidious psychological trap that they use.
And this is why Psych Week is important. I did this at the start of the last recording session where we accidentally um
Didn't
didn't
hit recording.
recordant,
Yeah.
if you will. Um this is two guys talking about some random stuff, and occasionally there may be some other guys. I don't know. Um, we don't want to be the news. That's exhausting. Running a newscast is like 3 full-time jobs in a trench coat.
Yeah.
But we hope that by understanding how people play on what it is to be human, that our viewers can look at other news sources critically and see that maybe there's something that should be investigated a little further before just blindly trusting it.
Yeah.
Um, so
Couldn't
I
have put it
have
better
I have
myself.
some points for this. One, some biases are universal. Two, successful marketing requires convincing people. And
Mm.
three, politics isn't policy; it's looking trustworthy. And
Yeah. On the some biases universal, I'd say the ones that media machines use the most are, tribalism, essentially not
yep,
for family, tribe, therefore bad, the other.
it's
And
the best bang for the buck.
yeah,
Basically,
it's very
everyone has
easy.
that bias.
Yeah, very easy, used a lot lately. Then they basically use confirmation bias and the one that I talked about just before about essentially it's kind of a bias of like it's my conclusion, therefore I identify with it,
Mm-hmm.
therefore I have to defend it. Because defending that conclusion essentially means defending yourself, and any attack on that conclusion is an attack on yourself.
And
And
if you
so
don't just have to defend the conclusion yourself, if instead you can get hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people to defend this conclusion for you using all sorts of lines of logic, then you diffuse the force that is
mm,
pushing back against you because you're saying, well, all these people can't be wrong.
yeah, and that's another bias that I wasn't even thinking about that they use. Is essentially the bias of the
Wisdom of the
crowd.
crowds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wisdom of the crowd. Essentially, because it's one of those things. It just left my mind, but there was stats that I was actually thinking of because a very large portion of people, I think it's something like 60% of all people, they're the ones who, or was it 50? Let's see
They're
here.
the ones who make the argument, hold look
Yeah,
up the
okay. So
logic.
yeah. So it's something around 60% of people will just go with the crowd because that's kind of how their mind works, is like they'll go with the crowd's logic because A, they don't want to be the odd one out, and they don't want to put themselves out there. Um, and they kind of want to be part of something, like everyone kind of wants to be part of something bigger. Most people don't really want to lead. Um, they don't want to be the odd one out. They don't want to be the one making the argument. They'd rather be part of the wave of force that reinforces that argument. Um,
The number I have is 56%.
56%. And then there's something like around 10% for people who are like they're the leaders, they put themselves out there. Um, and they're the people who are really willing to push the boundaries and push the envelope, as they would say. And then there are other people who are like, I think it's like free riders or something. They'll just take advantage of people's beliefs in order to manipulate the system. People who game theory that stuff.
Opportunistic, yeah.
That's the one. The opportunity there are, that's like 30% of people or something that's like opportunistic. And there are like around 10% of people that are leaders who will put themselves out there.
Okay, so I think that actually leads us to the convincing people bit of this.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
those are some numbers right there, and we hear that a lot of people will just go with the people around them, figuring that a large group of people who've already thought about the problem should be right.
Mm,
We have a small percentage of people who are, I guess you'd call them thought leaders. They are
mm,
promoting new ideas or perpetuating existing ideas.
mm,
And then you have the people who are just along for the game and hoping to improve their personal prestige.
mm.
But I'd like to switch to marketing here briefly because marketing isn't just products, it's ideas. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Like
and
the
to sell a
idea that
product, you have to
for
sell an
women that
idea.
smoking made them more oh, what was it? There was because basically smoking played off of the whole the
The
early
femme
feminist
fatale vibe,
movements.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I forget the exact
Mm.
details about it. But essentially they played off that to they played off like themes of I think it was like independence
Independence, yeah.
and
Independence and
self-reliance and
self-reliance.
yeah,
Hey!
basically all the feminist things. Yeah. And so and they basically they use those themes to basically promote smoking among women, which was really
And so even
insidious and
from
terrible.
even from an early time, if you want to look at this and you want to say no, don't attack my precious feminism. Feminism is pure and untainted. Like, look at this and look that even from the beginning, suffragism was co-opted by the desire to make money. Everything is
Yes.
co-opted by the desire to make money.
Oh God, that
But to get back to this, uh,
yeah.
staying with cigarettes, Camels in the US, they used to invite consumers, in another example of make up your own mind, to take the T-zone test. They would have doctors describe the feeling of camels in the throat as smooth and invigorating and not harsh like other brands of cigarette. They would say these cigarettes are actually healthy for you. We don't allow doctors to advertise cigarettes anymore for very, very good reasons. Um,
Yeah.
but here you are selling not just a product but an idea. You are saying with regards to camels, buying our product. Oh, you're not just making us money; you're doing yourself a favor.
Mm.
They say with certain brands of whiskey that this is something that looks sophisticated. It is the definition of elegance. Everyone will see that you are drinking this whiskey and they will know that you're a person of taste.
Yeah.
There's an ad for Belvedere vodka that keeps popping up on Instagram featuring Daniel Craig. And as I said last take, I'm not sure if he's dancing or convulsing. It really could go either way. And they're sort of saying this is an experience of being yourself, of being authentic.
Mm.
um i don't
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
know
it's
how
like they're
Belvedere
presenting
vodka
this
is going to
image of
make you
being
any
authentic.
more authentic than any other vodka in
Yeah.
excess, but
Well, see, that's the thing. They're presenting this image that all of these material things make you authentic. And they're convincing people, through the feeling of authenticity, something which many people kind of lack today is this feeling of the world being authentic because it's so superficial. So they're selling authenticity, as an
yeah,
idea as part of their
yep.
marketing campaigns.
The irony is palpable.
Yeah,
um
just like they did with feminism before.
oh,
They basically, and those are the opportunists. The opportunists, basically marketing ourselves are the opportunists.
okay, so let's go back to
Yeah.
ideas, right? We can have a product. I have a watch.
Yeah,
It's a
keep in mind
nice
we've run out
watch.
of
It's
time, so
reliable.
let's
Yep.
finish up quickly.
But you can also sell an idea without selling a product.
Mm,
And that is where this gets to politics. Um,
yeah.
I mentioned last recording, I'm going to go again. Albo. Is he actually beloved by the people at the moment, Kyle?
I mean, people like him, but they like him in the sense that he's inoffensive and he's not Scott Morrison, a complete and total fuck up.
Relatively low bar, but we'll take it. Anthony Albanese lived in the electorate that he was hoping to represent his entire life. He was is a person who came from a modest background, I believe a single working class mother.
Yep.
I don't remember
Housing
whether it was in
commission as well.
it was social housing.
It was
Yeah.
social housing, yeah.
And he built his brand on, being the Aussie battler in that respect,
Yeah.
being
Basically,
like the people he was proposing to
I'm an
represent.
average guy.
And he's made it to prime ministerhood, and he is, as prime minister, acting like an average person by not making a bunch of the decisions as prime minister that an average person would also not have the opportunity to make. But we talk about personal brands a lot in politics, and there is a mass deployment of psychologists in politics, in marketing, seeking to understand what the average person thinks, what the average person feels, and whether the average person is going to buy what you're selling them. You have a word in German that I've completely forgotten for a moment. Sympathisch. It sounds like sympathetic. It isn't. It refers to, looking at a person's face and just knowing that they're trustworthy. And all of politics is
kind of like the eyes to the window, eyes of the window to the soul thing. Kind of like that, eh?
Yeah, it's also very similar to the wisdom of the crowds concept. It is being able to paint someone as someone who is like you enough that they will do the right thing by you, even if their policy is solely on changing the name of potato scallops to potato cakes nationwide. Every single thing we're taught, it's every single thing we're told in marketing contexts is about truthiness. It's not about what is right or wrong. It's about what feels right. Media machines, advertisers, politicians, and political machines all exploit this to the hilt. Being able to become emotional about arguments. Being able to become emotional about arguments is really this giant liability. It is not like a tiny little dime-shaped hole. It is, in a sense, driving a tractor through a barn door.
In a sense, they're almost trying to radicalize you into believing what they want to believe. And part of me is just like, what's the difference between them and a terrorist organization? But then again, terrorist organizations are radicalizing people to kill people.
Terrorist organizations usually radicalize people along religious lines. They say that you are a devoted disciple and they can see that, but you need to undertake extra effort to be worthy, to be good enough. Whereas the radicalization in marketing terms is, no, you're good enough and so are we, because we're like
have you seen marketing these days? Most marketing is like,
yes.
Yeah, most marketing is basically, you're a piece of shit. You need to improve. You get better. Stop, you're a
buy our
sexist,
whiskey.
Racist,
be the manly man that you you are.
Basically, they're teaching people that they're deficient. We've run over time, but basically, maybe we could do a whole episode on that in the future. Is how society is taught that we are deficient somehow and we need fixing. It's.
Well, the good news is that I'm going to tell you that by virtue of your biases, you will always be deficient, and that humans
a very hopeful message.
Humans exist in a deficient condition, and the ultimate success in being human is to learn and grow as people, to overcome our shortfalls by being able to reason about the world around us.
Interesting. I don't agree that we're deficient, but I do see what you're saying there. Let's discuss that another time.
We will never be perfect. We will never be perfect.
That I agree.
But we can get closer. We can get closer.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's, again, another episode, we'll discuss all that some more, because I think it'll be an interesting conversation. For now, thank you for watching.
Why is Po-Body nerfect these days?
Thank you for watching.
We'll catch you later, y'all.